Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And today I'm talking to Allison Woods, who has an inspiring and amazing story, not just about her weight loss, but also about her discovery of intermittent fasting and consequently a whole foods diet that completely changed her relationship with food, with her weight, with herself, and with life in general. Here's our chat. Okay, so I'm talking today to Allison Woods. And Allison, lovely to see you. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what your life was like when you were still consuming sugar.
Okay, well, thank you, Netta, for having me. It's such an honor to be here. Oh, let's see. Well, I think that I have been a food addict or just into food my entire life. My mom tells a story of when I was 2 or 3 years old and she dropped me off at a neighbor's house for a play date. And when she came and picked me up, the neighbor said, "Oh, Allison was great, but she ate all the cookies out of the cookie jar."
Uh-huh.
They didn't even see me do it. Like they didn't. Yeah, and so I've been a sneak eater, and it's always been around sugar or flour, ever since I can remember. I don't remember that episode, but it's always been that way.
Yeah, so I mean, even before your first memories, you had this behavior. What do you have any memories of when you were a slightly older child?
Yeah. So I remember my mom would do everything she could. She had no sweet snacks in the house. She didn't have things she called sugar cereals in the house. But if it came in because of a special occasion or whatnot, I was sneaking down in the middle of the night to eat it. And I was always looking for it and trying to find ways to find food, sugar. It was all sugar food that wasn't readily available, but yet I still managed to find it.
So did you feel like you were restricted on a daily basis and then it was like no holds barred?
Yeah, I just had this constant drive for it. I don't know if I felt necessarily what that meant to me at that time. I just know I was always seeking food, and food was always something that I went to, like no matter what emotion it was, happy, sad, discouraged, bored, it was always food that like became my best friend. So it was always there.
And was it all food or was it certain types of food?
It is primarily either sugar or flour based foods, processed. The more highly processed, the more it was. I certainly wasn't out there seeking broccoli. But if you gave me a choice between a frosted cake and bread, I would go for bread. Like
Huh.
bread was always, it was always more that type of food. But they go hand in hand. So if I would eat ice cream, I would be craving either chips or crackers or something like that afterwards. So there was always this crunchy, salty thing that kind of matched up with sugar.
Even though it wasn't in the house or wasn't supposed to be in the house?
Yes.
Yeah. So this went on all your childhood. At what point in your life did you sort of become more aware that this was actually going on? This was like in your behavioral pattern, I guess.
I was probably in my 20s when I really started figuring it out. But I what I was trying to manage before that was my weight, right? Because of course my weight was climbing up and up and up. I've been overweight, obese, morbidly obese my entire adult life until recently. And so even as a child, I was always overweight. And so everything I was doing was about trying to control my weight. I didn't make the connection to what types of foods I was eating, like that it's sugar or flour or anything like that. It was just always about weight. And I made some pretty radical decisions to try and control my weight as a late teenager. Um, I started smoking because I hated smoking and I hated the taste of cigarettes. And I thought if I smoke, then I won't eat. That didn't last that long. I soon just kept eating, even though it tasted disgusting because of the taste of cigarettes. So there I am now, a smoker eating. Uh, when I learned to drive, I got a stick shift car so that I couldn't eat and do the stick shift.
Good.
Right? Yeah, that, and then it was like, okay, I can't smoke and stick shift and eat. Oh, it only took a matter of a few days, and I was still there eating the French fries, going through the drive-throughs, getting, 2 or 3 meals at drive-throughs. I would go to one, not just one drive-through, I'd go to several, and driving my stick shift, eating, smoking, and then it did all for me lead to harder drugs, and I started doing those. And the thing I loved about them was that they took my appetite away.
Huh.
And for the first time, I had peace around food. I didn't care about food. Uh, but drugs have their own really, really bad side effects. And not long after I started, I'm a non-functional addict. So I ended up in rehab when I was 23 years old. And I have been clean and sober since then. And I stopped smoking about a year after I got sober, maybe 2 years after I got sober. But then I was left with the food.
Yeah, well, bravo to you I mean, that must have been really difficult for the drugs and the cigarettes, and the fact that food was left over is kind of a testament to just how, like, I hesitate to use the word addicted because it's a loaded word, but we both understand that that's what we mean.
Yes.
And you can't live without food, whereas, we can live without cigarettes and hard drugs. So how did you pass this final frontier?
So it's taking me a while because I didn't pass it until just recently. And I'm now 52 years old. So uh, along the way, I tried many, many diets. I had been a member of Overeaters Anonymous. I had tried to let go of sugar and flour through that multiple times, and I just couldn't. I didn't have the mindset. It always felt like I was being deprived. It didn't feel like a choice I was making for me. It felt like someone else was always telling me what I needed to do with all these diets, and none of them were ever a perfect fit. So, the X diet says you have to eat eggs in the morning. I don't like eggs.
Mm-hmm.
So then I can't fully follow the diet. So if I can't fully follow the diet, I might as well go ahead and have candy. I mean, like, that's where my
Yeah.
brain would go. So it took all the way until May of 2019 when I found intermittent fasting. And that's when all the breakthroughs in my life started.
And that's amazing, because that to me is like what the key was for you is not this diet or that diet, eat this, not that. It's not eating at all. Now, for someone who's been pretty much totally dependent on food all your life, just the actual idea of not eating, didn't that freak you out?
At first I was like, what is this? The first time I ever heard of it, I was like, oh, there is no way I can ever do that. I'm eating all day long and I can't imagine, like, I'm going to get hangry and I'm going to, anytime in the past when I had tried to quote unquote restrict myself, it was usually through calorie restriction or something like that. And it never felt good. And, I just walked around hungry and not happy all day long. So I was like, no, I can't do this. But for some reason, this time, my wife had um, ran into an acquaintance of ours who was doing it, and he'd lost a significant amount of weight, and he started telling her about it. And when he was telling her about it, he was telling her that he was doing keto. And I don't do keto. I can't, I don't feel good on keto. It just doesn't work for me. I think
Yeah.
it's fantastic if it works for others, but it doesn't for me. So I was like, oh no, this intermittent fasting thing isn't for me because you have to do it with keto. But then she had another person that she works with who is a doctor who was like, he's doing intermittent fasting, but he's not doing keto. He's just eating whatever foods he wants. And I was like, oh. So I started looking more into it and really started doing a lot of research. And I found Jen Stevens' book, Delay, Don't Deny, and started clean fasting. And that made all the difference. And within a few days, I was like, this is it. This is my answer. I know that I can do this.
Amazing. And if you didn't get hungry or you didn't like feel starving?
No, it was incredible. I mean, I had maybe a touch of hunger as my body switches from sugar burning to fat burning, usually anywhere between a 12 and 16 hours. My body will do a little wave of hunger. And in the beginning, throwing a grain of Himalayan salt under my tongue helped pass the hunger. It lasts less than 15 minutes, having some water. And then just I would get distracted, and all of a sudden I have an app on my phone and it would go off and say, oh, you reached your 20 hours. I'd be like, oh, I guess it's time to eat. It was incredible.
It is incredible. I mean, 20 hours without eating, most people, as you did at the beginning, would think, why would I do that to myself?
Right, right. I couldn't fathom it. When I first started trying intermittent fasting, I wasn't yet clean fasting. And so I was drinking diet soda and chewing gum and didn't realize I was still spiking my insulin during my quote unquote fast. And so the fast was hard. I could barely make it to 16 hours. I was like white knuckling it at the counter, like willing the timer to switch before, and then eating everything in sight because I was starving. Once I discovered clean fasting, which, as you know, is just water, either flat or sparkling, but it's plain water, no flavors added at all, plain black coffee or plain black or green tea, and those can be hot or iced. And that's it. No, nothing added, no added flavors, no added foods, anything like that. Once I started doing that, I, I that was the key that unlocked it and just made it so much easier. And it was really noticeable, like from one day to the next. When the one day I wasn't clean fasting, and then the next day when I was, and I immediately was able to do like 18 hours, no problem. I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I get
Wow.
it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you say that you were still eating just whatever you wanted, or that there's no restriction or no changes?
Right. So I didn't restrict anything. At first, I was just eating what I wanted within my eating window. So after reading Delay, Don't Deny, I found the obesity code and I was listening to it through Audible because I preferred that to reading all the science words. So after listening to the obesity code by Dr. Jason Fung, uh, I stopped wanting any artificial sweeteners. I just stopped, which meant no more diet soda. And I used to drink that like by the 12 pack a day. And I just went cold turkey and just stopped having all diet just from that moment. I was like, I don't want to put those chemicals in my body anymore. And
Whereas
so,
before it hadn't bothered you?
no, I didn't. I thought the exact opposite. I thought that drinking the diet soda was helping me. I thought having all those artificial sweeteners was helping me, and not having sugar, real sugar, was the enemy, and artificial sweeteners was the answer. And so many people, because I had been morbidly obese. I mean, my top weight had been 369 pounds.
Mm.
I did have a gastric bypass in there that I'd lost some weight and then regained. But I was over 280 pounds when I started intermittent fasting. So I was still morbidly obese. And I had people, different doctors and different folks along the way who would say to me, the diet sodas are a problem. I'd be like, no, the ice cream I'm eating is a problem. The diet sodas are helping me. So I really didn't get it until I read his book. And then I was like, oh, it's causing the same brain reaction as sugar. Oh, the chemicals are doing worse things for me than eating whole real foods.
And can I just ask, when you were in that process of getting the gastric bypass, which is a major, major event in your health, in your life, did nobody who, like any health professional, did nobody talk about changing your diet or, even cutting out the sweeteners? Nobody mentioned that?
Everyone has always mentioned to me changing my diet. It's always been there. When I had the gastric bypass, that was 10 years ago. That was in 2011. Um, you know, I, they told me that I would not be able to have sugar the way that I did. And that I was looking forward to that. That was one of the reasons I had the gastric bypass, because I could not stop myself from eating. Doctors have always tried. I've had employers, friends, family, everybody who loved me has said at one point or another, please, Allison, do something. And then I would go try another diet. I would try another this. I'd try, I try liquid diets. I'd try pay in ways. I'd always try. And maybe for 2 3 months I could be successful. I could lose a little weight. And then I'd fall off the program. And when I'd fall off the program, it was like a deep dive. And I remember when I was making the decision to have the bypass. I mean, I really didn't want to have surgery to reconstruct my whole insides. That's not really what I was hoping for. But I mean, I was going to Costco, which warehouse food, right? They only sell things in giant sizes. And I was buying a giant pie and sitting down and eating it with a fork. The entire thing, like that was a portion. And I was like, I can't live like this anymore. I can't do this. I'm not enjoying my life. One of the things I love, love, love is Disneyland. And I was so big and so in so much pain and almost immobile. I had to rent a scooter to get around. I couldn't even walk. And it's like, this is not it was hard to get on rides. I had to worry every single time whether I'd fit on a ride. I didn't want to live like that anymore. So that's really why I did the gastric bypass, was because they said, this will force you to restrict your food. And I was like, yes, please, because
Yeah.
everything else I'd tried hadn't worked. And it did for a little while. I mean, the consequences of not restricting your food are pretty unpleasant with a
Sure.
gastric bypass. And so that's really how your body says, yeah, no, you've eaten too much food, you've eaten the wrong food, or you've eaten too quickly. And it lets you know very quickly if you've done any of those things. And so that worked for a little while, and I lost probably close to 150 pounds after
Wow.
the gastric bypass. Uh, but then, and life was starting to get better. I was happy. I was starting to fit into smaller clothes. I was still, I think, morbidly obese. I don't know what the category was, but maybe it was just obese. I don't know where the line is really. But in that time, I met my wife and we got engaged, and um, it was, and I had gotten down to like just above 200 pounds and started regaining. I mean, it was the point where I picked out a wedding dress, and by the time it came in, I, I I didn't fit in it anymore, and I had to take it to a seamstress to reconstruct the whole thing.
Mm.
And I just couldn't stop, and my weight just started going back up. And my pouch, when you have a gastric bypass, they make a pouch, and my pouch was expanding, and I was finding ways to go back to eating sugar and overeating and just piling on the food. And so
Yeah.
uh yeah, yeah.
So, what is the difference in your experience between the gastric bypass and the fact that it worked, but only for a little while, and intermittent fasting and the fact that it works? Why would it work any longer term than a gastric bypass?
Yeah. Um, Probably this is just based on my experience. Intermittent fasting is a choice that I am making on a daily basis, and it feels great. And in the beginning, when I first started intermittent fasting, like I said, I was eating things that every other diet had always told me you're not allowed to eat. And I was feeling good on it, and I couldn't believe it. And I'm talking about things like potatoes, right? I love potatoes, and every single diet I've ever been on has always said you can't have potatoes. No, no potatoes. Potatoes are bad. And I think I've had a potato at least once a week, if not every day, since I started intermittent fasting, and my body loves them.
Yeah.
So this whole idea of bioindividuality, that all of our bodies are different, I never understood that. No one ever told me that. Everything was always one size fits all. And even with the gastric bypass, I wasn't it's like I was having this external thing forcing different choices on me, but my mind wasn't really wanting to make those choices yet.
Mm.
And so it, even after all that time, and even after having some success with the gastric bypass, my mind was still seeking food as a way to soothe my emotions, cure my boredom, celebrations. Food was still like, this is what I do when anything happens.
Yeah.
So that I think that was the primary difference for me with between that and the intermittent fasting, is that with intermittent fasting, I'm able to make choices about the foods that make me feel good. The other thing is that with the gastric bypass, when you first have it, what they tell you is you need to eat small meals, like 6 to 8 small meals throughout the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I know now is that that means I'm spiking my insulin 6 to 8 times. It's staying elevated basically throughout the day. I'm basically filling my little pouch, waiting it for empty, filling it again, waiting it for it to empty. I am constantly in food burning mode, and never really getting into any sort of fat burning mode. You're kind of forced into it through the gastric bypass because of how it's more of a calorie restriction. I just couldn't eat. I still can't eat that much food in any
Yeah.
one sitting. So, but it did nothing for the cravings. It did nothing for the obsession. Intermittent fasting, however, for the first time in my life, my brain got quiet. I didn't have food constantly talking to me. There was this sense of calm because I know when I'm going to be eating. I know I'm going to be getting to have delicious foods that I love. And I don't have to think about it until then. I don't have to worry about it. And I didn't. It's the first time my brain just said, okay. And I had all this clarity and this increased energy, and I'm being more productive. And I'm finding that I want to get up and go. I know now that's the hormone leptin that really tells us you're full, you're at satiety, and go outside and take a walk.
Yeah.
And just finding that I wanted to be more active and do more things, and just like projects around the house that I would like, ugh, I can't do them. I'm not getting off the couch. I don't ever sit on the couch anymore. Like, it's very rare that I'm like, our TV only has things for my kiddo. I don't even know what popular shows are on these days. So that's such a difference, because like all I used to do was sit in front of the TV and eat. And I used to say, I don't have an off switch. I could never feel full ever. I just knew hungry and overstuffed. I never could feel the difference. I could never feel when I was approaching it. And intermittent fasting is the first thing that ever really gave me that freedom to feel, oh, I'm getting enough food. This is incredible.
Amazing. Amazing. Because we tend to believe that there is no off switch, whereas what it is that we haven't found it. We're looking in the wrong places.
Yeah, yeah. And I didn't realize that by eating all day, I was essentially blocking my brain from being able to read the signals. The off switch was there. I was just blocking it with my own behavior.
Yeah, with your own behavior. And I would say also with all the advice that we get about how to eat, and, not just the diets, even, just the general dietary advice is to eat little and often, not just, if you've had a gastric bypass, just generally. And that is like the opposite of how we feel good, at least.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like I've never felt this good, ever, ever. But at the time, I was still eating everything. And in fact, I rediscovered a love for baking. I had always loved baking and never allowed myself, because I couldn't control uh, what I was baking going into my mouth. And with intermittent fasting, I was finding that I could bake. I could bake while I was fasted, which was amazing. And then save a little bit for my window, or bake things that I don't really like, but make it for other people. And it just became this whole love, the way I show love. I mean, in the beginning, during the pandemic, I was sending out care packages every week to my family,
Oh.
who are on the other side of the country, and just baking up a storm like all the time. And it's interesting now that I'm sugar free. I'm like, I can't do that anymore. I'm like, I can't in good conscience send you sugar when I know more about it now. But at the time, the intermittent fasting was what was allowing me to do that, and I loved it. And so.
Yeah, and things change, they're not static. So, you're where you are at one point, and then, yeah, it's dynamic, things change. Just want to take a quick break to say just how amazing it is to talk to Allison and to see where she started out from and how far she's come. Because that's what life after sugar is all about. It's not about being perfect. It's not about getting it right first time, or even the second time or the third time. It's about taking that first step and being self-aware of who you are, what you need, what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and doing what it takes to get back your energy for life and live your life to the full. And that's why I'm inviting you to download your simple guide to getting more energy with less sugar on my website, aftersugarclub.com. So go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the tab Simple Guide. And you can also surf around there and look at all the free resources, like the videos about what to eat, what to buy at the grocery store, and what the deal is with fermented foods and gut health, because sugar is one of the worst things for gut health. And once you change your definition of what food is, and start eating a real foods diet will improve enormously. And if you want to be in a group of like-minded, empathetic people who are on the same path as you to their life after sugar, which is where we feel free from the hold sugar has on us, and where if you follow an intermittent fasting lifestyle, it becomes easy and natural, then come join us in our monthly membership, the After Sugar Club. Go to aftersugarclub.com/club to look around the club and see if it's a good fit for you. And if it is, join us. You can also find me on my Facebook page, Life After Sugar, and also on Instagram at My Life After Sugar, where I post pictures of what I eat, what I do, inspiration so that you can see that it's totally possible to live a fun and active life with all its ups and downs, even when you don't eat sugar. And check out the Life After Sugar YouTube channel as well, that has a growing library of recipes, tips, stories, and inspiring interviews. All right, let's get back to my chat with Allison. At what point did you say to yourself, yeah, I got to do something about the sugar?
Yeah. So what I had found is in the beginning with the intermittent fasting, appetite correction really kind of set in for me, and the highly processed foods became far less attractive. I stopped wanting fast food, which was amazing to me. I stopped really I started noticing when different foods made me not feel good, and was like, you know what, this isn't really window worthy, so I'm going to wait and have something that is. Um, and so that kind of naturally was happening. And so I was getting less and less sugar. And then I would say, I think it was probably around February of 2021, right? The pandemic and lockdown was still in place. It had been going on now for almost a year, and I had been doing fine through it, and then it hit me, and I was just like, I miss my family, I miss my friends, I miss going out places, and just this sadness came over me, and I turned to food. And I was eating I'm still fasting, but my choices in my eating window, once I made that choice to have something highly processed, I no longer had a choice about whether I was having something highly processed. And it just kind of snowballed. And I was overeating, binging at times in my eating window, but then my eating window is creeping longer. So my sweet spot is usually a 20-hour fast with a 4-hour window. My windows were creeping to like 6, 7, 8 hours where I was eating. And then my fasting was getting a little shorter, sometimes 16 hours, sometimes 18 hours. Sometimes I was still doing 20, but then my eating window, oh, I'm going to close it. And then I'd reopen it. And then I'd reopen it. And then I'd reopen it. And it was always for highly processed sugar, flour, crunchy, salty, all of that was in there. And I was like, I don't want to live this way. That my clothes were starting to get tighter. I was not feeling good about myself. And I was like, I was so close to a goal weight, like the goal weight that had been the super secret goal weight in the back of my head that I'd never ever said out loud. I was close to that. And I started going in the other direction. I was like, I don't want to do this. And there's a saying that when the student is ready, the teachers appear.
Yes.
And I started just looking up, just going into my Facebook communities, going online, just seeking answers. Like, how do you stop binging in your window? How do you stop overeating in your window? And almost every answer was sugar.
Yeah.
Every answer. And they probably had been there all along, but it's the first time I had seen so many people saying, I'm going sugar free. I'm going to do a sugar challenge. I'm stopping sugar for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to stop sugar this week. I'm limiting sugar. It's the first time that I really noticed how many people were talking about it. And I was like, oh, I need to do this.
Mm.
I think this is it. I think this is what I need to do. And it was like a switch that was flipped in my head of that mindset that never had been there before about, sugar and flour and highly processed foods. Suddenly it was like, this is a choice that I want to make because I don't like how I'm feeling. And I know the difference because I had been feeling fantastic, probably primarily because I wasn't eating so many highly processed foods in my window. And,
Surely.
and I could feel the difference now, and I don't like it.
So it was all about how you were feeling, and as a secondary thing, what you were eating.
Yes, yes. I really didn't, because what I was eating was my kids' snacks. So there was no way that it was quality food, and I knew I was mindlessly eating it. So with whole foods, I can tell the difference now. It's really exciting for me. With whole foods, when I eat real whole foods, I have an off switch and I can feel when I get to full. And then I still make a decision. Oh, I still want another bite of that really yummy, delicious thing on my plate. Okay,
Sure.
shouldn't have done that. But it's just a little bit of uncomfortability. With the highly processed foods, once I start eating them, I don't stop and I don't feel full. I constantly eat. And so I'm constantly going back to the pantry, get another handful, eat. Oh, I'm going to restrict myself to a handful. 5 minutes later, back to the pantry, getting another handful, but never getting that feeling like, oh, I should stop because I'm full. Oh, maybe I just overeat. No, it's only until the bag's done or I'm too tired to get up or whatever. And then suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I can't move
Yeah.
because I'm so overstuffed and so uncomfortable. And it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. I can
Yeah.
feel the difference and it's so uncomfortable.
And yes, and I think we can all relate. Yeah, we've all been there, most of us at least,
Uh-huh.
to a greater or lesser extent. And those foods that you say, you can't stop eating, whether it's sweet or salty and crunchy, whatever, they've been engineered by the food industry with millions and millions of dollars invested into making you behave that way and making your brain react that way. They've got you exactly where they want you.
Absolutely. And I never believed that until I really experienced it myself. And now as a health coach, I'm going and doing all this research and I'm like, "Oh my goodness." I mean, they hired psychologists and physiologists specifically to engineer these foods to have, like what you said, the bliss point where it's that perfect sweet, salty crunch, whatever it is they're trying to get you, so that you can't eat just one. And they're messing with our brains.
Yeah,
They're,
and they're very good at it.
yes, yes. I never, and so now that I know just how manipulated I was, um that's another thing that I'm like, I'm not going to let you manipulate me anymore. I do not like that at
Yeah.
all. But I never got it before. I never really understood it. I didn't, and I don't think it's that I didn't understand it. I didn't want to.
Mhm.
I wanted to keep eating what I wanted to eat. I thought that that was what was bringing me pleasure. I thought that that's what was going to make everything feel better. And so I didn't want to know different. And now,
That's very astute of you to recognize that.
thank you. I've done a lot of looking at this, both for myself and then now for my clients, because I have so much freedom now. I want to help everybody. And so I've been looking into a lot of this and what makes me want to eat versus someone else, and how does this all work? Um, so yeah, so I was doing all this research and finding out, and seeing all of a sudden all these people saying sugar, 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 gotta stop the sugar. And I was like, okay. So then it's, well, how do I define what sugar free is? And I just love your podcast. I love how it's defining it in your way, in your time. I believe that too, because again, bio individuality is important. And if it's not your choice based on how you feel, you are not going to stick with it. You're just not, because the messages that are out there, the environmental cues, the messages, the cravings, that they're all working against us. And so it has to be our own choice. But so for me, I started trying to figure out what does sugar free mean to me. And there were so many opinions and there were so many different definitions. And most of the folks in the sugar-free space were talking that I found were talking again about keto. It's like, I already know that I tried keto and I already know that that does not work for me. I eat primarily, I say I lean toward vegetarian. I love beans and potatoes, like I said, and all kinds of vegetables. And so uh, that wasn't going to be the answer for me. And so I was like, it can't be that it's only one or the other. It can't be like you're either eating keto or you're eating sugar. Like there has to be some other way. So I was doing some more research, and somebody posted in something, if you really want to get off sugar, read this book called Bright Line Eating.
With Susan Pierce
Okay.
Thompson, yeah.
Yes. And
And
so
that's not for everybody either.
no, it's not. She has created a program and she's written the book speaking directly to addicts and people who she calls high on the susceptibility scale. I mean, you can be anywhere on the susceptibility scale to do it, but her main focus was folks like me who have a really hard time putting sugar down once you pick it up. And it's not like I can have one little square of dark chocolate a night and be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
so um, so I read her book, and she has several things she calls bright lines, and her bright lines are you just don't cross them. And the way that she defined her bright line for sugar resonated with me and really made sense. And basically what it is that no processed sugars, no processed uh, no processed artificial sugars, um, nothing like juiced or blended, but whole fruit is okay. And from her research, she's a cognitive psychologist. From her research about how it hits the brain, fruit doesn't light up the brain in the same way that, say, having honey does, or syrup, or agave, or sugar does. And she thinks primarily that's because the rate of absorption is lessened because of the fiber in the fruit.
And the whole fruit as well. The fiber's not, kind of torn apart like it would be when it's liquidized or in smoothies, pureed, whatever.
Right. So she does not advocate for smoothies or juicing. It's eating the whole fruit. Right.
And chewing your food.
Right. Chewing slows it down. Think about how quickly you eat applesauce versus how quickly you eat an apple.
Right.
The chewing is a whole big part of that. So that definition of being sugar-free worked for me. And the thing that always tripped me up in the past too, when I was trying to do sugar-free, my little attempts along the way, I'll call them, was condiments. And because sugar is everywhere, it really is. And it's hidden in a lot of things, but it's in everything. And it's really difficult to find a lot of condiments without any sugar whatsoever that don't then have artificial sugars in them, right? They'll say sugar free or low sugar, but they have some form of artificial something in there, or some form of sugar in another form that they don't have to call it sugar, and it's still in there. So under her definition, if I'm understanding it correctly, is for a condiment, if you're having it sparingly, as long as whatever the sugar type is, real, artificial, whatever form, it cannot be in the top three ingredients for a condiment. And I was like, oh, yay, because now I can still have a, a burger and have my little barbecue sauce on it. And I have very little, but the taste, that's fine for me. And I enjoy that. And I was that it's the little things that always tripped me up. Like, oh, I want to be able to go to a restaurant and just eat and not worry so much about everything. And so uh that and then trying like the ones that have absolutely no sugar and no artificial, they didn't taste good to me. Some of those, it's like, this isn't going to be workable for
Right.
long term.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who convinces myself to eat something that doesn't taste good. I
No,
just
you can't convince yourself that you like something. I mean, your tastes can change, that's for sure. And I'm sure you've experienced where your liking for sweeteners has gone way down. Not sweeteners, but sweetness has gone way, way down. But, there's a certain point, like I don't like celery and you can't make me like it.
right, exactly. It's like, you're not going to get me to eat eggs no matter how much you want me to. I don't like them. Yeah, exactly. So I follow her bright line for sugar, and then she has a bright line for flour. And because I know how much I am susceptible to flour, it lights up my brain the same. Basically, all these natural foods, I mean, sugar's a natural food from sugar cane, flour from wheat or from almonds or what have you. The way she describes it, it's you take a plant and you refine it and process it all the way down into a white powdery form.
She makes that analogy, with cocaine yeah, and it's like, ooh,
And
okay.
I'm already, an addict. And so this is the first time I had ever seen somebody lay it out so clearly that sugar and flours are hitting my dopamine centers the exact same way that drugs used to, and lighting me up. And that it's not that it's making me feel good. What it is it's giving me relief from the craving. And so the whole brain science around it is just fascinating to me. I'm still researching that and looking into that, because I'm just like, oh yeah, this totally resonates now. Like, now is the time for me to find all this, because I'm ready for it.
And
So
that's
I
a big
follow her.
that's a big thing, being ready makes a huge difference, because that research is being done and has been ongoing for years, but it's when you yourself are ready to listen, that's when that switch happens.
Exactly. I don't think anybody could have given this to me a moment before I was ready. And so I know that for others, it's like, I just want to be here to help them when they're ready.
That's
Um,
lovely.
and
Beautiful.
yeah, because you can't force somebody to make these decisions. It has to be for yourself. But so for me, I found her book and it resonates. Now she has a couple of other bright lines around food quantities and food timing. I tried them and they did not resonate for me, because the intermittent fasting has been so helpful and it's really my lifestyle. And I cannot ever see going back to eating 3 meals a day. Like, I was on vacation once and it ended up we ate like all day long. Like, it just, and I was like, I don't like that. I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So um, within her program, she has ways you can modify it, and I have done that. But I do, I needed a definition that worked for me for what is, and I needed, and this is the other thing that I tell people is, you need to have a firm definition of what it means to you. Now, your definition can change over time, but usually it gets narrower, not wider,
Mhm.
as you find things out. But if you're going to, if you're realizing that sugar and flour and or flour or other foods are just not playing a role that you want in your life, they're not making you feel good, and you want to change that, you need to have a clear definition, because you need to have a, this is okay and this is not okay for me within myself. This
Yeah.
is going to make me feel good. This isn't. And if you're not clear, those lines become super, super blurry. And then next thing I know, I'm back into a bag of crackers followed by a pint of ice cream.
Yeah, yeah. And you need to know yourself well enough, which usually means doing a little bit of experimenting and making some trial and error, experiments. And that's okay. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get it right first time.
Absolutely. 100%. Like there's no way to fail at this. There's no wagon that we're in. There's no cliff that we're on the edge of. It's just I eat today and I notice how I feel, and I can make a different decision tomorrow, but it does not negate all the work that I've done and all the progress that I've made if the decision I made today made me not feel good and wasn't my ideal foods. Okay.
Totally. Yeah, totally resonate with that. And now you coach people and you help them. You're an intermittent fasting coach, right?
I am. I am. I've been helping folks for quite a while now, and it all started with family and friends who noticed. I mean, through the intermittent fasting, and then through continuing with no sugar, no flour, I have gotten down below my super secret goal weight, and I am now in a quote unquote normal weight, according to BMI. I call it my right size body. And I feel amazing. I'm wearing size clothes that I never imagined I would be able to wear, and no more pain, and um, the all kinds of really, really fantastic non-scale victories. So my friends and family are noticing, because how do you not notice that I'm half of what I was? And they're like, what are you doing? And I'm just shouting about it to anybody. I am intermittent fasting. You need to come and do this. I'm not saying you need to come and do this. I'm like, if you want, I will help you. If you want to try it, let me help you. Let me show you how to do it. Let me talk to you. And it just started naturally becoming a coaching relationship with my friends and family, and they were being successful and feeling great. And they're the ones who said, Allison, you're a health educator. I've been a health educator for more than 25 years. I have my master's degree in public health, specializing in health education. I've been a coach in the business world. I know how to do coaching. I have my doctorate degree of psychology and
Wow.
organization development, and did a lot in the group facilitation sphere, leadership development, um, all culture of organizations. But within that was a lot of coaching, one-on-one coaching, group coaching. And so they were like, you already have that background, and now you have this passion and it's working. What? And I'd already retired from my job at doing organization development to stay home and raise my son. And it's like, oh, I could do this. He's starting back to school to be gone more hours of the day. And so it's like, oh, I can do this. And I was like, oh my goodness. And it just started feeling right. And it started feeling really good. So I took myself back to school and went and became a certified health coach, and launched my business, and am able to help people. And I'm just loving it, because not everybody can find what what they need in just reading the book or just looking online. And particularly if you don't have support around you. I mean, I was very lucky. My wife started intermittent fasting, I think, 2 weeks after I did. My mom's now doing it. Like I said, all my friends, my close friends are, if they're not doing it, they at least understand it. And they're all very, at this point, supportive. But if you don't have that kind of support, or you don't have the time to go through and do all the research that I've done, working with a coach can really be helpful. And I started working with a coach, and that's made all the difference for me too. So me having my own coach and then now coaching others, it's just, I want people to feel the way that I feel, this incredible freedom, this incredible flexibility, and that we don't have to be trapped by our diet brain anymore.
Yeah, amen to that. Amazing. And if someone wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I have a website. The easiest way is to go on my website, and there's all kinds of information on there, but you can also hit the contact Allison and just shoot me an email through there. My website is yourifcoach.com. So that's yourifcoach.com. And I have all the information on there. And you can also find me on Instagram. And on Instagram, I just realized I have to look up exactly what my handle is, because I don't know it off the top of my head. I don't talk about myself this way. Okay, so on Instagram, I am Allison, ALLISON .your, YOUR .if .coach, COACH. And the name of my business is Your IF Coach. So I'm your intermittent fasting coach.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful, Allison. You're doing good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for talking to me today.
Thank you for having me. This has been an incredible experience.
It's wonderful, wonderful to hear just, how free and how great you feel. I mean, in my book, that's all that counts, however you get there.
I agree.
Thank you.
Smashing. Whether you're an intermittent faster or not, whether you struggle or have struggled in the past with your weight or not, or any other health issue, cutting sugar is the common denominator that is guaranteed to make you feel better. And Allison's story is yet another example of that. And this is what I call life after sugar, because not only is there life after sugar, but when we imagine it from the other side as some kind of joyless and dull life with self-denial, we can't imagine what it's really like, which is actually a life full of vitality and energy, where you have this zest for life because you're not always dealing with the immediate health issues that are keeping you from doing what you really want to do. Spend quality time with your family. Wear the clothes that you want to wear and that fit comfortably. Eat the food that you want to eat and that's delicious and nourishes you and makes you feel good instead of making you feel hooked. Life after sugar is when you feel confident at the grocery store, at celebrations, in social situations, because you know what you want for your life and you're 100% happy with what's on your plate or what's not on your plate. Life after sugar is all about knowing who you are, what you want, and getting rid of anything that gets in the way of that, including sugar. So if you want to be part of a group of motivated people who get you and understand where you're going and where you're coming from, and who are all on the same path to living their own life after sugar, then join us in our monthly membership, the After Sugar Club. That's at aftersugarclub.com/club. And if you've enjoyed this episode and you're enjoying this podcast, then please rate it and leave me a review to let me know how this podcast is inspiring you in your life after sugar. And don't forget to subscribe so that new episodes magically appear in your podcast player every Sunday. Thank you for listening. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.